Welcome, my name is Abel Sanchez, and this lesson will cover forEach, which is a function which is part of arrays, and it takes a callback. It is a very useful function, as often we have to loop through collections of information, and in this case we can do it without using counters, and it also makes code a lot more compact. So let's go ahead and take a look at some code. As you can see here, we have an employees array, which is a collection of objects. Each of them are value pairs. They have a name and they also have a salary. Notice well that each of those salaries are strings and not numbers. As you can see down here on line 15, we are using the forEach function, which is part of arrays, and we're passing in a callback. The callback is add, and we're going to write that next. So let's go ahead and write our function stub. Now, one of the things to note is that whenever you have a callback on an array, automatically behind the scenes, three things are passed in. The first is the item that you're working on, and I wrote item, yes. The second one is the counter, and the last one is the array itself. So each of those items in the array are passed one by one. The position that you're at is passed in as well as the entire array on each iteration. So let's go ahead and inspect what's taking place within the browser, and we'll write to the console. In order to do that, we'll simply write the item. Let's go ahead and save this file, and let's go ahead and move to the browser. Let's go ahead and reload the page. And you can see there that all three of those items were written to the console, but let's go ahead and put in a breakpoint so we can see how this is called on every iteration of this collection. So let's go ahead and reload the page. You can see there that the first time it stops, it's passing in the first item of that array, which is name and Peter, which is this one right here. It also passes in the counter position. As you can see there, the first item in that array is the 0th item, and then it passes in the complete array. So if we look at, if we expand this, we can see there's Hannah, there's Bruce, and the first item is Peter. So if we let the code run until the next breakpoint, we've again stopped, and this time the counter is 1. The item we're looking at is Bruce, and the array will always be the same. Let's go ahead and run it once more. And as you can see there, we're now on the last item of the array. The counter is 2, and the array, once again, is the same. Let's go ahead and run it all the way to the end. Let's remove the breakpoint. Let's go back. And one of the things that we'd want to do in this case is add all of those salaries. So let's go ahead and create a global variable of salaries. And let's start it at 0. Now, each of those items has salary information, so we can use salaries and access the item.salary information. Now, because it's a string, we need to convert it to a number, and we can use the JavaScript number function to do that. And at the very end, we'll write to the console, and we'll write out the salaries. This is simply so it reads better. And now if we go back to the browser and we reload the page and we move to the console, we can see that we have salaries of 475,000. If you add up the values here, you'll get that number. So as you can see, this is a pretty clean way of iterating through all of the items in your array and assigning a function to act on each of those items. So this turns out to be very, very useful. Now, as an exercise, I'm going to ask you to do the exact same thing to add all of the payments, in this case, of a data set from the city of Chicago. And you can see that here. These are all of the payments that were made to the city of Chicago, or that were made by the city of Chicago to vendors between 2005 and 2010. Now it's a lot of data. If we go all the way to the end, you can see there we have over 30,000 data rows. And I'm going to ask you to walk through all of this and do very much the same thing we did with that array of 3 items, but now do it on an array of 30,000 items. And as you'll see, it's very much the same exercise. So let's go ahead and take a look at your starter code. I'll provide you this file, and as you can see here, the very first thing in the file here is referencing that file, so that gets loaded into memory. As you can see here, the very first line is assigning all of this JSON data onto this variable of Chicago. So once we get past this line, we have Chicago in memory and we can start to make use of it. So as you can see here, Chicago.data.forEach will let us act upon that information. So let's go ahead and reload and load this file onto the browser. So this is add payments.html. And now if we enter Chicago at the console, you can see there that at the top of the hierarchy we have 2 value pairs, one of them called meta, the other one called data. And even if you knew nothing about this data set, you'd get a strong hint that data has the meat of the information, which it does. So let's go ahead and access data and access a specific element, in this case the 0th element, and you can see there that you're already getting access to the information. There's many of these, so we can say access the 20th, and the element number 20,000, and you can see there that you're getting back information. Now I'll leave it up to you as a data science exercise to dig through the data and figure out which is the payment. There's a number of values here that could be potential payments. I can tell you that this is the year, but if you look within the file, either at the data or comparing between rows, you'll be able to figure out which is the column that has the payment information. Now if you come back to your file, you can write your add function to add all of this information up. Now make sure you are within the right column, and as you start to write to the console your results, you'll be able to tell whether what you're doing is correct or not. So with that, I'll wish you happy coding and goodbye.